Hello, welcome to another Tweedy Outdoors video. Please excuse the ridiculous sunglasses. I'm in the grip of my mercifully short annual hay fever season, which runs from just sort of late April to sometime in May, and only really affects me in London. So as soon as the pollen has kind of blown out of my eyes, I'll be much better. It's those London plane trees, which are, as the name suggests, somewhat peculiar to London. I think they originally come from Turkey, maybe, but they were planted in London, I think, is it during the Victorian era, out of malevolence, as far as I understand, just to make people like me suffer for a few weeks of the year. But it's not too bad, it's just that, and then I'm over it. And normally when I get out of London, it also gets better by itself. Anyway, you're not here to listen to me complain about my brief spell of pollen allergies, which are really not that bad. Mustn't complain. I'm here in Harpenden, which I just checked the toponymy of the name. It's hi to Allotment Fox, who has inspired me to sort of pay a bit more attention to place names, because they often give you some sense of the history of the place, and it apparently derives from Harpenden. Probably mispronouncing that. Is that Old English? It's the military path. We would know from, if you are watching Allotment Fox's videos, that Heripath is the military path. You see a lot of those around Avebury, for example, the Here path leading west out of Avebury, and Dean meaning valley. So Harpenden, the military path leading through a valley. The valley in question is the Lee Valley. You can't quite see it, but I'd perhaps put in a shot of that back there. There we go, there is the River Lee. Pretty though that is, that isn't my main reason for coming to this neck of the woods today. So yes, I should probably get round to telling you why I'm here. I'm here to see a ditch, of course. What other reason would anyone have for visiting the countryside? The Devil's Dyke. Quite a notable ditch, part of an Iron Age hill fort in the just the other side of the village of Wheathampstead, which is where I'm walking to now. Possibly of some historical significance, but we'll talk a bit more about that when we get there. Lovely blue sky today. A pleasant spring morning right at the end of April. I'm a great fan of benches out in the countryside. I guess we can call this the countryside, but it's sort of wedged between two sets of electric fences. Somehow kind of diminishes the bucolic charm of it, but nice view. Some lambs, sheep in the field over there, and view down across the Lee Valley. Keeping it real, passing through the village of Wheathampstead now. I was actually a bit thirsty, so stopped and picked up a tea, and I'm going to sit here. Sorry about the cars. I'm going to sit here under the Wheathampstead sign, have a cup of tea. Imagine how idyllic this spot would be without the constant passing cars. Again, imagine that without the car noise. Oh, and without the bin I've just got in shot there. Try over there. Seems a bit unfair to people with broad shoulders. I'm alright, but yeah. It's looking promising. And the main entrance to the Devil's Dyke is a little further up the road. Just following this tiny path here up to this field to see what we can see of the actual hill fort. So all the land over there was part of this Iron Age hill fort. The Devil's Dyke, which we're going to see in a moment, was one of the embankments on the west side. This was the last refuge, if we are to believe the history around this, of the Catuvellauni tribe. Not a huge amount of fuss made about it. We're just sort of on the edge of Wheathampstead, and the edge of this housing estate here, and there is an interpretation sign, and then slightly smart, handsome entrance with a plaque talking a little bit about the history and the fact that this land was given to, I don't know, is it now owned by the local council? I'm not sure, by the Right Honourable Lord Brocket. I was particularly keen to come this time of year to the Devil's Dyke, as I heard it's quite a good spot for bluebells. They're just coming into their own now. Here it is, the Devil's Dyke. Definitely looks better with bluebells. Getting a bit of komorebi there as well. Sun shining through the dappled leaves. This is possibly quite a significant site in British history. This is maybe one of the sites of a significant battle of Caesar's. Was this his second invasion of Britain in something like 54 BC, 55 BC, around then, was it? When I think for a second time he'd come to conquer Britain and had sent word to Cassivellaunus, who was the chieftain of the Catuvellauni tribe, have I got that right? And demanded tribute, probably not the Cornish beer of that name, but Cassivellaunus refused, and forthwith Julius Caesar dispatched an army with him at the helm, I think, to invade. And I think there was some amount of back and forth as they faffed around, visiting different parts of the country, having skirmishes. But eventually the Catuvellauni tribe were apparently hiding out here, this hill fort just outside Wheathampstead, and this was a spot where a final battle ensued, and alas, the Catuvellauni were defeated. Cassivellaunus survived, and from then on started tugging his forelock at Caesar, metaphorically. And possibly then became a sort of, what's the word, a vassal, effectively a puppet leader under the Roman Empire. Although that said, Caesar only shortly after that successful conquest in 54, 55 BC then returned to Gaul to deal with the crop failures there and the civil unrest. So the Roman Empire didn't then invade again properly for another nearly 100 years, as I understand it. Cassivellaunus is quite an interesting character because in some ways he's possibly the first Briton ever mentioned in history. I think, well, I mean, obviously this is debated, but you could argue that Caesar's accounts, his autobiography of him gadding about, conquering places, was the first bit of credible written history that covered the British Isles. And he was the first person to be Cassivellaunus, the leader of the Catuvellauni tribe, was the first Briton to be mentioned in that. So, in a way, you could think of him as the first ever king of Britain, although of course his domain was only a small part of what we consider Britain today. But he did lead a bunch of other tribes in that rebellion, that uprising against the Roman invasion. So on some level you could think of him as a sort of first candidate of something like first king of England / Britain. Cassivellaunus is mentioned in the Welsh Triads as well, which I think are sort of bordering on more folklore than generally considered to be a historical record. I'd quite like to believe the Welsh Triads were in fact a mafia group based out of Lampeter, smuggling in illicit lava bread, but they are in fact a series of poetic annals of ancient Britain, its history and its folklore. and things come in threes in the Welsh Triads, as the name would suggest. Cassivellaunus appears in 3 lots of these triads as well. So the first one is the bestowed horses of the Isles of Britain, talking about Cassivellaunus's horse. And then in the second one, again mentioning Cassivellaunus's horse, the 3 unfortunate councils of the island of Britain, and that's councils with an S. So not, you know, councils as in Camden Council, which is quite an unfortunate council, North London joke for you there. But that recounts one of the 3 councils that he appears in, recounts that he apparently had his horse stolen by the Romans and agreed to let the Romans land in Britain on the condition that they return his beloved horse, which was considered unfortunate counsel with an S. And then the final one, which is a bit odd, is the 3 golden shoemakers in the Welsh Triads, in which at some point Cassivellaunus pretends to be a shoemaker in order to smuggle himself into Rome or something. Sounds pretty apocryphal to me, but what a lovely name for a bit of history, the 3 golden shoemakers. I suppose in a sense the story of Cassivellaunus and his horse is sort of reminiscent of that line in Richard III, "My kingdom for a horse." That did seem to be the trade he was making there. There we go, great bit of map graphics there, me filming my phone. So you can see we're now down near the south end of the nicest stretch of the Devil's Dyke. There is a ditch on the other side of where the Iron Age hillfort stood, marked on the map as the Belgic Oppidum. I think Oppidum just means a sort of administrative centre. But the ditch on the other side is not accessible to the public. It's called the Slad. I think I read somewhere that's possibly a natural feature, whereas this one is man-made. Sir Mortimer Wheeler, he gets about a bit, doesn't he? He came and excavated part of this ditch, the Devil's Dyke, here at some point, and I think he decreed that it went down to a depth of 13 metres. It's quite a major undertaking, and probably the River Lee, which is to the north of us here, was used as a defence to the north. Not quite sure what they did on the south side. The dog barking's a bit annoying, isn't it? I think there's something quite fitting, not wanting to overwork it, about the site of British capitulation to a foreign empire being lined with bluebells there. It's a sort of such an iconically British flower, sort of suggests, I don't know, something or other. But lovely, what an absolutely beautiful spot. One last little flurry of bluebells here before we head out of the ditch and into probably less interesting terrain. From here on, I'm going to follow this country lane more or less towards Harpenden, back to Harpenden, but I'm going to take a small detour to visit a bit of common land, a bit more woodland, hopefully see some more bluebells. So this is marked on the map as no man's land now. It's an area of common land, historically common land. I assume it's still it's marked as open access, so it's not quite sure what the status is nowadays, but somebody back there set up a tarp, which is always encouraging to see, and it seems to be fertile ground for a den building, presumably the local kids, who knows, the local adults. Pretty nice, good work there. Thought this woodland might be a bit more strewn with bluebells than it actually is, but that's the odd patch here and there. Nice looking, they look a little bit too pristine to be completely natural, and they include some of the white bluebells, or white bells are they called as well. That is nice. Just looks a little bit too sort of manicured to be completely natural. Oh, a helicopter flying overhead, great. Okay, I'm out of the woods now in the non-metaphorical sense. Fly in my face. And I think we've just got the last stretch back to Harpenden now. Probably not so interesting scenery from here on. It just looks like a long straight track along the side of a field. But I'm hoping there might be a hostelry which will be opening its doors around about the time of my arrival in Harpenden. It's not quite 12 yet, but if I'm lucky I will pass something that looks inviting and have hopefully a quick pint of crisp refreshing beer before getting the train back home. Majestic railway bridge then. The Harpenden Arms would have seemed an obvious choice, but doesn't seem to have much in the way of outdoor seating. It's such a pleasant day that it would be nice to sit out and enjoy the blue skies, etc. So I'm going to try this chap over here instead, the Inn on the Green. Cheers. Well, I apologise, I've had to remove the jacket. It's actually quite a warm, sunny sort of a day, but makes the crisp, refreshing glass of beer all the more appreciated. Bit of a modern pub inside, so perhaps not much sense in showing that, but I don't know, nice hanging baskets out here, and I found a nice quiet spot to sit. So thank you for following along on that little walking expedition. I hope some of that was watchable and or interesting. I think it's a really interesting spot, the Devil's Dyke, and Harpenden. I think the quickest trains are something like 26 minutes from St Pancras. No, nobody watching this channel lives in London, but just in the very you know, unlikely event that any of you are London based, want a slightly interesting sort of history kind of walk, nice circular walk from Harpenden, pretty quick to get to on the train. Very pleasant countryside, I think, considering it's so close to London, and particularly this time of year with the bluebells and everything. That made for a very nice walk. So thanks for watching, cheers, and I'll see you on the next one.